Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, the Executive Director of the American Constitutional Rights Union and also the ACRU Action Fund. And I'm kind of got since it's on the other side of Memorial Day, is Wednesday, Seersucker Jacket Day. So I'm ready for summer. But there's something else that we're not ready for that will be happening tomorrow on the 1st of June, as this is the final month as we get ready for the Biden ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms gun brace ban. And I think this is something that should concern many of us who are Second Amendment enthusiasts, because what we are talking about is an unconstitutional rule from an executive bureaucracy that was issued out in January that by tomorrow morning, if not rectified, will cause millions of Americans to be felons when they have not done anything wrong. Legal, law abiding citizens who all of a sudden, because of a rule change, and understand we're supposed to be governed and not ruled in a constitutional republic, they could be facing 10 years and a $10,000 fine. But as well as that, we're talking about people, legal, law abiding citizens, that could lose their right to own firearms in the future, as well as never being able to vote. So, to talk about this with me, we are being joined with Tom McHale, who is the editor of American Handgunner magazine. And today he has published 7 books, most of which focus on the Second Amendment related topics, concealed carry, personal defense, and guns and shooting. During the past 10 years, Tom has published nearly 2,000 articles across a variety of publications on this subject. Tom, thanks so much for joining us again. And of course, Tom has written an incredible book called The United States Constitution, the Practical Guide to It. And I just got to tell you, I think that there are members of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, to include the director and also President Joe Biden, they need to read your book.
I keep offering to send a bunch of them to Washington, no charge, and no takers on that one. So,
well, you and I talked about this previously. Just we hit on it a little bit. And back in February, I went up to Capitol Hill talking about this ban, this proposed, gun brace ban, and how it could be damaging to legal, law-abiding citizens. And I got all these promises from members up there at Congress, Second Amendment caucus, that they would make sure that this would not go into effect, and they do everything about it. But first and foremost, kind of explain to everyone what this whole gun brace ban is.
Sure thing. Yeah, back in about 2012, Guy, one of the founders actually of SB Tactical, had a friend / acquaintance that he was on the range with and who was disabled. And he said, sure, there's got to be a way to allow this person to fire his AR type pistol with one hand. And so, how the typical garage entrepreneur story took place, and he went and he ended up, kind of inventing this concept of putting a brace, on the back of an AR pistol that kind of supported on your forearm, and then you can hold the grip as normal and shoot it. And it worked. Since that time, somewhere between 10 and 40 million of those have been sold and are floating around somewhere in this country. And now the ATF was involved from day one. Right. The first thing this guy did, being a smart businessman, was say, hey, I better make sure the feds we're all on the same page with this. And he showed them what it was and went through the designs. And they said, yep, no problem. You're not changing the function or the design of this gun. Everything's good to go. So fast forward some years, and, I won't go through all the gory details, but what's happened since then is the ATF has kind of flip-flopped based on the political winds and said, well, you can't really use that. Well, you can hold it up higher than, with the one arm, or no, you can't. And they're back and forth, right? And here we are today, where they're about to create 20 million insta-felons in our country. Literally, by 12:01 a.m. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have somewhere between, say, 5 and 20 million brand new federal felons.
And this is just a rubber device that you put on it. And yes, you can enable people not just to use it as an arm brace now, but they can also put it up to the shoulder. But the thing is that it does not change anything as far as the composition, doesn't change the velocity, the caliber, nothing. It's just an accessory. And as I said in our previous conversation, it's like telling a woman, you know what, you cannot have that pearl necklace with that dress because it completely changes changes that dress. So we're going to tax you. We're going to fine you. You have to register that pearl necklace. That's basically what they're doing with us, right?
Yeah, it actually is. There's no good option if this stands, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. There's a long way to go on this thing, but there's no good option other than registering it with the federal government. Going through a year-long process, paying $200, getting fingerprints and photographs, and sending it all in, asking Uncle Sam for a permission slip to own this piece of plastic, and that's where we're at right now, as of tomorrow.
It's interesting because I read that you have had I think it's the Fifth Circuit Court, and you've also had a judge, federal judge here in Texas, that put an injunction against this because, again, you cannot have an executive bureaucracy that all of a sudden changes a rule that makes people into felons, because a rule is not a law. And so what you're saying is that we're now going to have rules, and we can make rules whatever we want. No, by the way, we'll make you into a felon because of a rule that we just concocted out of the air. This has to go through the approval of the Congress. Am I correct?
I'm gonna have to check my book on this. And okay, yes, I'm being incredibly sarcastic because this is all absolutely ridiculous. But I'm pretty sure that Congress makes the laws. Do you need to? You may want to correct me on that.
Yeah, that's a little Schoolhouse
Either that
Rock.
or unelected bureaucrats. I'm not sure, but
well, I think Schoolhouse Rock taught us how a bill becomes law, and maybe along with your book, you can send them a video of Schoolhouse Rock. But the danger of this is, as you just alluded to, first and foremost, they want people to register. And we all know that gun registry ends up in a very bad way. It leads toward gun confiscation. And then we just talked about this issue about how the ATF, or no government agency, has the ability to make law. They don't have the ability to just write something like Pharaoh Ramses and say, so let it be written, so let it be done. So when you think about where American citizens are right now, what's their best recourse? Because you've got to be in purgatory. You're in limbo. You're caught, and you don't really understand and know what to do.
You bring up an excellent point, and I think we need to spend just a second, if I may, on some practical advice. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know your official legal background.
I'm not.
We're all responsible for understanding the laws. So, with that said, be very, very careful about this while this controversy is going on, because the director of the ATF you referenced a minute ago, a guy named Steve Dettelbach, I think is his name, outright lied in congressional testimony about this issue. He said all people have to do is just remove it. If they have one, they just have to take it off of there and it's fine. That is false.
Yep.
That is not at all true, and it is not at all backed up by the text behind all of this, rule that has been created. That qualifies as constructive possession. You have the two parts required to put that together and make it what's now, by rule, for what that's worth, an illegal weapon. So don't listen to him. Look at the words that are published on this topic. You really don't have many options. You can destroy any firearm that's subject to this. You can send it to the ATF. You can register it, as you said, or you can actually permanently disable, that function. You can take that piece of plastic off and destroy it, or sell it to somebody who doesn't have the rest of the parts required to make this thing. But you cannot have any access or control to it after tomorrow morning.
And that's amazing.
Careful.
And that's really amazing when you think about it, because not only is this a violation of your Second Amendment right, it seems it's a violation of your Fourth Amendment as well. Because what's going to happen? Are we going to have ATF just going around knocking on people's doors, people that have not committed any crime really whatsoever? And now they're going to be treated as criminals. They're going to be told that, hey, I need to come in your house and check your array of weapons. Where does this logically end when we think about what happens when the sun rises on the 1st of June in the United States of America?
I think, and I would bet quite a bit on this. I bet we're going to see a couple of Second Amendment martyrs out of this process. They'll find a case somewhere where they find one of these things in somebody's home for some reason, and we're going to see some example made, over this issue,
Mhm.
because the stakes are huge in this. And if you're sitting at home thinking, well, I don't have a AR pistol brace or whatever, stop and think. And I know this is painful, pretend you're Joe Biden for just 1 minute and say, wow, if I figure out with this test case that I can make 20 million Americans instant felons by changing a rule, what's next? What
Yeah.
can I do next as Joe Biden? You think about semi-automatic firearms of any kind. Oh, now
Mhm.
they're assault weapons by a rule. Think about magazines that hold more than one round. Oh, that's
Mhm.
definitely an assault weapon because we now have a rule made by unelected bureaucrats. So I don't have to tell you
Mhm.
this. I want the folks at home to understand, if you own a hunting rifle or a shotgun for whatever, you're next.
You're absolutely right, because this is the opening of Pandora's box. And as we said, we heard people, the veterans, tell us in the Middle East, you never let the camel get his nose under the
Mhm.
tent, because the rest of the
Mhm.
body will follow. So this definition of an assault weapon, anything that you use, to include, this object right here, this pen, could be an assault weapon. But
Mhm.
they have now, said that a semi-automatic rifle. Well, then what keeps them from saying a semi-automatic handgun? What keeps them from
Mhm.
saying a semi-automatic shotgun?
Right.
These things are assault weapons. And what really upsets me is are all these terms out there. You got an AR pistol, then you have a short barrel rifle, then you have this or that. It changes nothing as far as what the function
Mhm.
of that weapon does. It's all about who has control of that weapon. That's why you have people that are going out and shooting and killing others. But many times, Tom, we find out that these things could have been prevented if the federal government were doing what they were supposed to do,
Mhm.
as far as checking the background system.
Right. You, you know who all of this applies to: the most law-abiding section of citizens in this
Mm,
country. People who go through the process and legally buy a firearm or get a
mhm.
carry permit or whatever, depending on the state where you reside. Those aren't the people committing crimes with whatever an assault tool is, right? So
Mhm.
this isn't targeted at a criminal. Criminals have hacksaws. They can take any old rifle and chop the barrel off and make it a short barreled, whatever, scary, whatever Biden wants to call it, right?
Yeah.
This is impacting you and I and everybody listening to this program.
It's interesting, because we saw even during the Trump administration, after the shooting in Las Vegas, that all of a sudden there was this ban on bump stocks. Now, I have to personally tell you, I'd never seen a bump stock in my life. But now all of a sudden, something that was approved, something that people went through clearance to get, it
Hmm.
becomes, criminalized. And we saw the court come back and overturn that ban, saying that, that's kind of the shall not be infringed part of the Second Amendment. So, do you think that this will eventually get to the Supreme Court? Because there's going to be someone that is going to be the test case of this.
Hmm.
Uh, and if we don't get it fixed, then we are saying to the bureaucracies, unelected officials, they can make law.
Well, the bump stock issue proved that they can ban my thumb. Here's a bump stock right here. I
Mhm.
stick that through a belt loop and hold on to any kind of rifle. It's now a bump rifle. Okay, I mean that's how absurd that whole issue was. So with this issue, yeah, my opinion, it absolutely is headed for the courts. It's already in the courts. And here's another
Mhm.
point that people need to be very careful about. There's, I think, the Fifth Circuit, as I recall,
Yeah.
has got this early case from the Firearms Policy Coalition and some
Yes.
others, and there's an injunction on that. But be careful, that almost certainly does not apply to you or I or the vast majority of people
You're
listening to
correct.
this right now.
It only applies to the plaintiffs, when I went back and read it. But
Hmm.
the Congress had the ability to step in on this, and there's HJ Resolution 44, and for
Hmm.
whatever reason they have not acted upon it. And I just want to encourage people. I know I wrote it down right here. Uh, Steve Scalise, who is the person that's in charge of bringing things to the House floor, he is the House Majority Leader. His office number is 202-225-3015. Now, supposedly they're going to be up there tonight working on the debt ceiling, which is not a fiscal responsibility act. They need to be working on this, because, as you
Hmm.
have so articulated, tens of millions of Americans could wake up tomorrow and be felons because of an executive overreach.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Is
So,
this okay? I have a question for you.
yeah.
And I know it technically isn't, but this sure smells a little bit like the whole Bill of Attainder issue in the Constitution, doesn't it? I
Yeah,
mean,
it does.
we're not bypassing the courtroom, but we're making instant felons out of something that already exists in normal everyday life. And
You are seriously usurping the individual constitutional rights that are out there. And again, you articulated so perfectly is that if this test case goes through, then Joe Biden can turn around and just continue to say to the ATF, make this rule,
mm-hmm.
make that rule. And we will continue to make felons out of people to the point where, guess what? Conservatives won't be able to vote. And I think that really
Mm-hmm.
is the long-term goal is they don't want legal law-abiding gun owners to be able to vote. And guess what that brings about? Oh, by the way, with all of these millions of illegals that they're allowing
Mm-hmm.
into the country, they want them to be able to vote. So there's a bigger issue at stake here.
Yep.
So when we think about now going on from this, either as we articulated, you can register it, you can destroy it, you can turn it in to the ATF, but we have got to get control and we have got to understand our constitutional rights. And I think that this is going to be a great lesson in civics here in the United States of America. But more people have to be talking about this right now because we're no longer abiding by the rule of law and the
Mm-hmm.
Constitution, and we're no longer being governed. We're just allowing people to just come in and make stuff up. Being at the EPA saying that we're going to all be driving electric vehicles. You can't have this certain type of stove. You can't have this certain type of dishwasher. Do you think that the American people are going to finally look and say, "I've had enough of this"?
I sure hope so. And I also hope that our elected representatives wake up and realize they've had enough of this. Regardless of which side of this issue they take, their job is becoming irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
We're spending money without their input and approval. We're making laws without, without them at all, right?
No, you're
I would
absolutely right.
hope that everyone can unite behind putting a stop to, this bureaucratic lawmaking that's going on.
And let's understand this to the folks out there of the progressive socialist leftist persuasion who may be watching Live Free TV right now. First and foremost, you cannot live free if you allow people to rule over you by making rules and not govern over you through the process that we have, which is truly a threat to democracy. But what if constitutional conservatives all of a sudden attain power in this country and they just start to make rules like this? Don't you think the
Mm-hmm.
left would be just totally upset? Don't you think they would go crazy?
Yeah. You always have to flip it, don't you? How does this look from the opposite perspective?
Yeah, it does. So tomorrow morning, we've got to be prepared if nothing happens tonight with HJ Res 44. And I just want to say to the American people, and I'm sure Tom will agree, you have got to get engaged. You have to get involved. And that's why the American Constitutional Rights Union is here to help you understand your constitutional rights, to help you understand that a government bureaucracy cannot just make a rule that all of a sudden turns you into a criminal and punishes you. You have to be able to abide by, they have to abide by, and you have to understand your rights, your freedoms, your liberties, which are without a doubt being taken away from you. Furthermore, you have to understand these definitions. When I saw Jim Jordan questioning the ATF director, he didn't know the difference between a pistol, a short barrel rifle, or anything. I mean, it was just appalling the level of incompetence that we saw from him. But yet he's in a position to cause Americans to become felons. Tom, I'll give you the last word on this.
Okay. My last word is this: pick up the phone right now. And, Colonel, you might have better advice than me on this, but I think a phone call, a handwritten letter, make noise. Call your representatives right now and remind them that they are becoming irrelevant and they need to get busy and do their job.
Yeah, I remember when Barack Obama was giving the State of the Union address, and he said in that House of Representatives before the joint session that I have a pen and I have a phone, and I'll take
Hmm.
executive action. And members of the legislative branch actually stood and clapped for that. That is a threat to our democracy when we allow one person to believe that they can rule over us and they can change things, much the same as Lucy moves the football. This is the goalpost being moved, all for the advancement of an ideological agenda. And
Hmm.
again, the Second Amendment is very clear. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Therefore, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is a huge infringement, and it can result in you never being able to live free again in the United States of America. 10 years in prison is a tough thing. $10,000, that's a tough thing. But the fact that you'll never be able to own a firearm, you'll never be able to vote in the United States of America, that's what the left is trying to do, as well as disarm you. So, Tom, McHale, thank you so very much for joining me. I want to once again tell everybody about Tom's incredible book that a lot of people that are elected officials need to read, The Practical Guide to the United States Constitution. I think I'll personally send my copy to the ATF director overnight mail. Hey, folks, please join us here at the American Constitutional Rights Union, theacru.org, theacru.org. And also, we have the Committee to Support and Defend. That's committee to support and defend.org. And that is what we call the largest constitutional conservative organization of veterans. And veterans, you got to be very clear about what this can do for us. This is one of the things they tried to push through PTSD so that they could take away our gun rights. And now they're trying to do it because you put a simple piece of plastic, an accessory, on a firearm. Doesn't change anything whatsoever. So, Tom McHale, God be with you. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay in the fight.
Thank you very much.
Steadfast and loyal, people.